Question 1. Compliance review shows that a user received an email appearing to be from a senior executive requesting immediate transfer of funds to a new vendor account. The email contains a sense of urgency and asks the user not to discuss the request with anyone. The user is unsure if this is a legitimate request or a phishing attempt. What is the most appropriate course of action for the user to take to ensure regulatory compliance and security awareness? Option A. Forward the email to the IT security department for investigation and await further instructions before taking any action. Option B. Immediately process the fund transfer as requested to avoid delaying the executive's urgent business needs. Option C. Delete the email to avoid any potential issues and assume it is a spam message. Option D. Reply to the email asking for further verification from the sender, including their direct phone number. The correct answer is B. Immediately process the fund transfer as requested to avoid delaying the executive's urgent business needs. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the practitioner to balance immediate operational needs with long-term regulatory compliance and ethical responsibilities. The pressure to quickly address a potential security incident, especially one involving sensitive data, can lead to hasty decisions that might overlook critical compliance steps. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the response not only mitigates the immediate threat, but also adheres to all applicable regulations and ethical standards for data handling and incident reporting. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process that prioritizes data protection and regulatory adherence. This includes verifying the legitimacy of the request, assessing the potential impact of the phishing attempt on sensitive data, and following established internal procedures for reporting and escalating security incidents. This approach is right because it aligns with the principles of data privacy and security mandated by regulations such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, depending on the exam's specified jurisdiction. These regulations require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data, and to have procedures in place for handling data breaches. By verifying the request and following established protocols, the practitioner ensures that any actions taken are lawful, proportionate, and documented, thereby minimizing legal and reputational risk. An incorrect approach that involves immediately fulfilling the request without verification poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This bypasses essential security controls and could lead to unauthorized access or disclosure of sensitive information, violating data protection principles and potentially leading to severe penalties under privacy laws. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the email due to a belief that it is a minor issue, fails to acknowledge the evolving nature of phishing and social engineering threats. This negligence can result in a successful attack, leading to data breaches and non-compliance with mandatory breach notification requirements. Finally, an approach that involves deleting the email without proper investigation or documentation is also professionally unacceptable. This prevents any potential forensic analysis, hinders the organization's ability to understand the threat landscape, and makes it impossible to demonstrate due diligence in the event of an incident, thus failing to meet regulatory expectations for incident response and record keeping. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. First, always verify the authenticity of any suspicious communication, especially those requesting sensitive information or action. Second, consult and adhere to established organizational policies and procedures for security incident response and data handling. Third, if there is any doubt or if the request involves sensitive data, escalate the matter to the appropriate security or compliance team. Fourth, ensure all actions and decisions are thoroughly documented for audit and compliance purposes. This structured approach ensures that immediate threats are addressed while maintaining a strong compliance posture. Question 2. The investigation demonstrates a potential unauthorized access to a customer database containing personally identifiable information, PI. As a certified security awareness practitioner, CSAP, what is the most appropriate initial step to take to manage this situation in compliance with data privacy regulations? Option A. Inform only the IT security team and await their findings before taking any further steps. Option B. Issue a public statement acknowledging a potential security incident to manage public perception. Option C. Delay any action until further evidence confirms a definitive data breach has occurred. Option D. Immediately initiate a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the scope, nature, and potential impact of the unauthorized access on individuals. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the scope, nature, and potential impact of the unauthorized access on individuals. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a potential data breach involving sensitive customer information. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate, decisive action that balances regulatory compliance, customer trust, and operational continuity. The Certified Security Awareness Practitioner, CSAP, must navigate the complexities of data privacy laws, understand the potential impact of a breach, and implement appropriate mitigation strategies. Careful judgment is required to avoid further damage and ensure adherence to legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment to understand the scope and impact of the potential breach. This assessment should identify the types of data compromised, the number of individuals affected, and the potential harm to those individuals. This aligns with the principles of data protection regulations, such as the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, or CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act, which mandate timely notification to supervisory authorities and affected individuals when a personal data breach is likely to result in a risk to the rights and freedoms of natural persons. A thorough risk assessment is the foundation for determining the appropriate response, including notification obligations, remediation steps, and communication strategies. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume the breach is minor and only inform internal stakeholders without a formal assessment. This fails to acknowledge the potential severity of data compromise and neglects the legal obligation to assess and report breaches that pose a risk to individuals. It also erodes trust with customers and regulators. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize public relations over regulatory compliance by issuing a broad, unverified public statement before understanding the facts. This can lead to misinformation, panic, and legal repercussions for failing to provide accurate and timely information as required by law. It also risks disclosing sensitive details prematurely. A third incorrect approach is to delay any action, hoping the issue resolves itself or goes unnoticed. This is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. Procrastination in the face of a potential data breach significantly increases the risk of harm to individuals and exposes the organization to substantial fines and legal liabilities for non-compliance with breach notification requirements. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with immediate containment and investigation. This involves activating the incident response plan, gathering evidence, and conducting a thorough risk assessment. Based on the assessment, the organization must then determine its notification obligations under relevant data privacy laws and communicate transparently and promptly with affected individuals and regulatory bodies. Continuous monitoring and post-incident review are also crucial to prevent future occurrences. Question 3. The analysis reveals that a cybersecurity team is evaluating the long-term effectiveness of its security awareness program. The program currently consists of an annual mandatory training module and a quarterly newsletter. The team is considering several strategies to ensure the program's sustainability and relevance in the face of evolving cyber threats and potential budget constraints. Which of the following strategies represents the most effective approach for achieving program sustainability and maintaining ongoing management support? Option A. Focus on acquiring the latest security awareness training software and platforms, assuming that advanced technology will automatically enhance program effectiveness and employee engagement, and deferring content updates until the next major compliance cycle. Option B. Continue with the current annual training and quarterly newsletter format, but increase the frequency of compliance audits to demonstrate adherence to regulatory requirements and justify the program's existence. Option C. Shift the program's primary objective to solely meeting minimum compliance requirements and allocate any remaining resources to incident response capabilities, arguing that proactive awareness is less critical than reactive defense. Option D. Implement a continuous improvement process that includes regular threat intelligence analysis, employee feedback mechanisms, and frequent updates to training content based on current threats and organizational changes, while also tracking key performance indicators, KPI, related to incident reduction and reporting to demonstrate program value to management. The correct answer is D. Implement a continuous improvement process that includes regular threat intelligence analysis, employee feedback mechanisms, and frequent updates to training content based on current threats and organizational changes, while also tracking key performance indicators, KPI, related to incident reduction and reporting to demonstrate program value to management. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security awareness programs, maintaining long-term effectiveness and management buy-in. The professional challenge lies in demonstrating the ongoing value of the program beyond initial implementation and compliance checks, especially when faced with budget constraints or competing priorities. Careful judgment is required to balance proactive threat adaptation with resource allocation, and to ensure the program remains a strategic asset rather than a mere compliance checkbox. The correct approach involves a proactive and data-driven strategy for program sustainability. This includes establishing a robust feedback loop from employees and incident response teams to identify emerging threats and training gaps. Regularly updating training content based on these insights, alongside changes in the threat landscape and organizational policies, ensures relevance. Furthermore, demonstrating the program's ROI through metrics like reduced incident rates, improved reporting, and positive audit findings is crucial for securing ongoing management support and budget. This aligns with the ethical imperative to provide effective security measures and the regulatory expectation. Within a U.S. context, for example, under frameworks like NIST, CSAP, or specific industry regulations like HIPAA for healthcare, to maintain a secure environment through continuous improvement and adaptation to evolving risks. An approach that relies solely on annual refresher training without incorporating current threat intelligence or user feedback fails to meet the dynamic nature of cybersecurity threats. This can lead to outdated training that is ineffective against new attack vectors, potentially resulting in security incidents and regulatory noncompliance. It also neglects the ethical responsibility to equip employees with the most relevant and up-to-date defenses. An approach that prioritizes new technology implementation over content updates and continuous improvement risks creating a program that is technically advanced but conceptually stagnant. While new tools can be beneficial, if the underlying awareness training remains static, employees may not understand how to effectively use or interact with these tools in the face of evolving social engineering tactics or malware. This can lead to a false sense of security and increased vulnerability. An approach that focuses solely on compliance metrics without demonstrating tangible improvements in security posture or employee behavior misses the core purpose of a security awareness program. While compliance is important, a truly sustainable program drives behavioral change and reduces actual risk. Relying only on ticking boxes for compliance can lead to a program that is perceived as a bureaucratic burden rather than a valuable security investment, making it vulnerable to budget cuts. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous cycle of assessment, adaptation, and communication. This means regularly evaluating the program's effectiveness, identifying areas for improvement based on threat intelligence and internal feedback, updating training materials accordingly, and consistently communicating the program's value and impact to management. This proactive and iterative approach ensures the program remains relevant, effective, and supported. Question 4. Stakeholder feedback indicates a growing concern regarding the physical security of sensitive client documents stored in on-site archives and the potential for unauthorized access to restricted areas. As a certified security awareness practitioner, CSAP, what is the most effective approach to address these concerns and ensure compliance with relevant data protection regulations? Option A. Focus solely on enhancing digital security measures, assuming that robust cyber defenses will indirectly protect physical assets. Option B. Implement a mandatory annual training session for all employees on general security awareness, emphasizing the importance of locking their workstations. Option C. Rely on employee reports of suspicious activity to identify and address physical security weaknesses as they arise. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive physical security risk assessment to identify vulnerabilities, evaluate threats, and prioritize mitigation strategies for physical access controls and sensitive information handling. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive physical security risk assessment to identify vulnerabilities, evaluate threats, and prioritize mitigation strategies for physical access controls and sensitive information handling. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with robust physical security measures, directly impacting the organization's ability to protect sensitive information and comply with regulatory requirements. The CSAP practitioner must demonstrate a proactive approach to identifying and mitigating physical security risks, rather than reacting to incidents. This involves understanding the organization's specific threat landscape and implementing controls that are both effective and practical. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive physical security risk assessment. This process systematically identifies potential threats, e.g., unauthorized access, theft of physical documents, tailgating, analyzes their likelihood and impact, and prioritizes mitigation strategies. For a certified security awareness practitioner, CSAP, this directly aligns with the core competency of recognizing physical security threats and securing physical access controls. Regulatory frameworks such as those governing data protection, e.g., GDPR in the UK or HIPAA in the US, depending on the exam's specified jurisdiction, mandate that organizations implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect sensitive information. A risk assessment is the foundational step in determining what these measures should be, ensuring that controls are proportionate to the identified risks and that sensitive information in physical spaces is adequately protected. This proactive approach also supports the ethical obligation to safeguard organizational assets and stakeholder data. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on employee self-reporting of security concerns without a structured assessment. While employee feedback is valuable, it is often anecdotal and may not cover the full spectrum of potential threats or vulnerabilities. This approach fails to meet regulatory requirements for a systematic risk management process and could lead to overlooked critical risks. Another incorrect approach is to implement security measures based on industry best practices without a specific assessment of the organization's unique environment and threat profile. While best practices offer a good starting point, they may not be sufficient or may be overly burdensome if not tailored to the specific context. This can lead to ineffective security or wasted resources, and may not satisfy the due diligence expected under regulatory oversight. A further incorrect approach is to focus exclusively on digital security threats and neglect physical security. This is a significant failure, as physical security breaches can directly lead to the compromise of digital assets, e.g., by stealing devices or gaining unauthorized physical access to server rooms. Regulatory requirements often encompass both physical and digital security as integral components of an overall information security program. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with understanding the organization's specific regulatory obligations and the types of sensitive information it handles. This is followed by a structured risk assessment methodology that considers both internal and external threats to physical security. The findings of the risk assessment then inform the selection and implementation of appropriate physical security controls, including access controls, surveillance, and policies for handling sensitive physical documents. Finally, ongoing monitoring and review are essential to adapt to evolving threats and ensure continued compliance and effectiveness. Question 5. To address the challenge of developing an effective and compliant security awareness program, which approach best aligns with a robust needs assessment process for identifying organizational security risks, analyzing the threat landscape, assessing vulnerabilities, and meeting legal and regulatory requirements. Option A. Focus primarily on implementing training modules that address the most recent and high-profile security incidents the organization has experienced. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive needs assessment by systematically identifying organizational security risks, analyzing the threat landscape, performing vulnerability assessments, and thoroughly reviewing all applicable legal and regulatory requirements to define program scope, objectives, target audience segments, and resource allocation. Option C. Prioritize training topics based on the immediate requests and perceived importance from senior management and department heads, regardless of a formal risk assessment. Option D. Adopt a widely available, standardized security awareness training package that covers general security best practices without specific tailoring to the organization's unique risk profile or regulatory obligations. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive needs assessment by systematically identifying organizational security risks, analyzing the threat landscape, performing vulnerability assessments, and thoroughly reviewing all applicable legal and regulatory requirements to define program scope, objectives, target audience segments, and resource allocation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because a security awareness practitioner, CSAP, must balance the immediate need to address identified vulnerabilities with the long-term strategic goal of building a sustainable and effective security awareness program. Rushing to implement solutions without a thorough needs assessment can lead to wasted resources, ineffective training, and a failure to address the root causes of security risks. The practitioner must also navigate competing stakeholder priorities and ensure compliance with relevant regulations, which adds a layer of complexity. Careful judgment is required to prioritize actions that yield the greatest impact while laying the groundwork for future program success. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive needs assessment that systematically identifies organizational security risks, analyzes the threat landscape, conducts vulnerability assessments, and thoroughly reviews legal and regulatory requirements. This forms the foundation for defining clear program scope and objectives, identifying target audience segments, and allocating resources effectively. This approach is correct because it aligns with best practices in program development and is implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate risk management and due diligence. For instance, in the U.S., regulations like HIPAA for healthcare and GLBA for financial institutions require organizations to implement security safeguards based on identified risks. Similarly, GDPR in Europe mandates data protection by design and by default, which necessitates a thorough understanding of risks and vulnerabilities. A structured needs assessment ensures that the security awareness program is tailored to the organization's specific context, addresses actual threats, and meets legal obligations, thereby maximizing its effectiveness and demonstrating due diligence. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on the most visible or recent security incidents without a broader risk assessment is an incorrect approach. This reactive strategy fails to identify underlying systemic vulnerabilities or emerging threats, leading to a program that may be ineffective against a wider range of risks and potentially miss critical compliance requirements. It also neglects the importance of understanding the overall threat landscape and the organization's specific vulnerabilities. Prioritizing training based on the loudest stakeholders' concerns without a data-driven risk assessment is also incorrect. While stakeholder engagement is important, allowing individual preferences to dictate program direction can lead to a misallocation of resources, addressing perceived rather than actual risks, and potentially overlooking critical legal or regulatory obligations. This approach lacks the objective foundation necessary for effective risk management and compliance. Implementing a generic, off-the-shelf security awareness program without tailoring it to the organization's specific risks, threat landscape, and legal requirements is another incorrect approach. Such a program is unlikely to resonate with the target audience, address the most pertinent vulnerabilities, or satisfy specific regulatory mandates. It represents a failure to conduct a proper needs assessment and a missed opportunity to build a program that is both compliant and effective. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive needs assessment. This involves gathering data on current security incidents, known vulnerabilities, the external threat landscape, and all applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Following this, they should analyze this data to identify key risk areas and define the program's scope and objectives. Stakeholder analysis should then inform the prioritization of efforts and resource allocation, ensuring buy-in and alignment. Finally, the target audience segments should be clearly defined to enable the development of tailored and effective awareness initiatives. This systematic approach ensures that the security awareness program is risk-informed, compliant, and strategically aligned with organizational goals. Question 6. The review process indicates that the current security awareness program relies heavily on a single annual email blast with a link to a lengthy policy document. To improve employee engagement and knowledge retention, which of the following communication strategies would be most effective in promoting security awareness initiatives within the organization? Option A. Develop a multi-channel communication strategy that includes regular email updates, a dedicated section on the company intranet with FAQs and resources, periodic posters in common areas, and short, engaging video modules accessible on demand. Option B. Increase the frequency of the annual email blast to twice a year, ensuring each email contains an updated version of the security policy. Option C. Focus all communication efforts on technical security alerts and advisories, assuming that employees will seek out information on broader security awareness topics if they are interested. Option D. Implement a mandatory, in-person security awareness training session that lasts for an entire day, covering all aspects of the organization's security policies in detail. The correct answer is A. Develop a multi-channel communication strategy that includes regular email updates, a dedicated section on the company intranet with FAQs and resources, periodic posters in common areas, and short, engaging video modules accessible on demand. Explanation. The review process indicates a need to refine the organization's security awareness communication strategy. This scenario is professionally challenging because effectively communicating complex security concepts to a diverse workforce requires a nuanced approach that balances engagement with regulatory compliance. A poorly designed communication strategy can lead to low adoption rates, increased security incidents, and potential regulatory penalties. Careful judgment is required to select communication channels and content that resonate with employees while adhering to relevant guidelines. The correct approach involves developing a multi-channel communication strategy that leverages a variety of platforms to deliver targeted and engaging security awareness messages. This approach is right because it acknowledges that different employees consume information through different channels and at different times. By utilizing email for formal announcements, newsletters for regular updates, posters for visual reminders, and the intranet for comprehensive resources, the organization can maximize reach and impact. This aligns with the ethical imperative to provide employees with the necessary knowledge and tools to protect organizational assets and personal data. Furthermore, it supports the spirit of regulatory frameworks that mandate effective security training and awareness programs, ensuring that employees are adequately informed about their responsibilities and the risks they face. An approach that relies solely on mandatory annual training sessions fails because it is often perceived as a compliance checkbox rather than an ongoing learning process. This can lead to information overload and reduced retention, making employees less likely to internalize and apply security best practices. It also neglects the need for continuous reinforcement and timely updates on emerging threats, which is crucial for maintaining a strong security posture. An approach that focuses exclusively on technical jargon and complex security terminology is incorrect because it alienates a significant portion of the workforce who may not have a technical background. This can lead to disengagement and a lack of understanding, rendering the awareness efforts ineffective. Security awareness is for everyone, and communication must be accessible and understandable to all employees, regardless of their technical expertise. An approach that prioritizes sensationalized or fear-based messaging without providing actionable guidance is ethically questionable and professionally unsound. While it might grab attention, it can also create anxiety and distrust, hindering genuine understanding and proactive behavior. Effective security awareness should empower employees with knowledge and practical steps, not just instill fear. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the target audience, the organization's culture, and the specific security risks. It requires understanding the principles of effective communication, including clarity, consistency, and engagement. Professionals should consult relevant regulatory guidance to ensure compliance, and then design a strategy that is both effective in raising awareness and sustainable in the long term, adapting to evolving threats and employee feedback. Question 7. What factors determine the appropriate level of urgency and resource allocation when responding to a reported security incident, considering potential harm to the organization and its stakeholders? Option A. The technical complexity of the security vulnerability exploited and the number of systems initially identified as affected. Option B. Perceived technical skill level of the individual who discovered the incident and their immediate reporting speed. Option C. The subjective feeling of urgency expressed by the first responder and the ease of containing the incident without further investigation. Option D. The potential for loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability of sensitive data, alongside the likelihood of operational disruption financial loss, and reputational damage. The correct answer is D. The potential for loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability of sensitive data, alongside the likelihood of operational disruption, financial loss, and reputational damage. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because accurately assessing the impact of a security incident is crucial for effective incident response, resource allocation, and regulatory compliance. Misjudging the impact can lead to undersourcing a critical incident, causing greater damage, or oversourcing a minor one, wasting valuable resources. Careful judgment is required to balance the urgency of response with the need for accurate information. The correct approach involves a systematic evaluation of potential harm to the organization's confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data, as well as operational disruption, financial loss, and reputational damage. This aligns with the principles of incident response frameworks, which emphasize prioritizing incidents based on their potential impact. For a certified security awareness practitioner, CSAP, in the U.S., this would be guided by frameworks like NIST SB 800-61 Revision 2, which stresses the importance of incident impact assessment for effective response and reporting. Ethical considerations also demand a prompt and proportionate response to protect stakeholders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical nature of the incident, without considering its broader business implications, fails to meet regulatory expectations for comprehensive incident management. For instance, ignoring potential financial losses or reputational damage, even if the technical breach seems contained, would be a significant oversight under U.S. data breach notification laws and best practices. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of reporting over accuracy of impact assessment can lead to unnecessary panic or misallocation of resources. Timely reporting is important. It must be based on a reasonable understanding of the incident's severity. Rushing to report without a proper impact assessment can violate the spirit of regulatory requirements that aim for informed and proportionate actions. An approach that relies solely on the initial report from the affected user, without independent verification or further investigation into the potential scope and consequences, is also flawed. This can lead to an underestimation of the incident's true impact, potentially delaying critical containment and recovery efforts, and failing to meet the due diligence expected in incident response. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Initial triage. Quickly assess the reported incident for immediate threats. 2. Information gathering. Collect relevant details about the incident's nature, scope, and potential affected systems/data. 3. Impact assessment. Systematically evaluate the potential consequences across confidentiality, integrity, availability, financial, operational, and reputational domains. 4. Prioritization. Rank the incident based on the assessed impact to determine the appropriate response level. 5. Documentation. Record all findings and decisions throughout the process. Question 8. The evaluation methodology shows that a financial services firm is preparing to roll out its annual mandatory security awareness training. The firm has a geographically dispersed workforce with varying roles and technical proficiencies. The training must cover critical topics like phishing, social engineering, and data handling. The firm needs to ensure maximum participation and comprehension while maintaining operational continuity and demonstrating compliance. Which of the following approaches best addresses these requirements? Option A. Implement a blended learning approach combining live, instructor-led virtual sessions with on-demand e-learning modules, supported by a clear enrollment process, proactive communication regarding session schedules and mandatory attendance, and readily available technical support for participants. Option B. Provide training solely through a mobile-first application, requiring employees to download and access all content via their personal devices. Option C. Deliver all training content exclusively through a series of self-paced, asynchronous e-learning modules accessible via the company intranet, with a simple completion check at the end of each module. Option D. Schedule a single, mandatory live virtual training session for all employees, requiring attendance during a specific time slot, with no alternative sessions offered. The correct answer is A. Implement a blended learning approach combining live, instructor-led virtual sessions with on-demand e-learning modules, supported by a clear enrollment process, proactive communication regarding session schedules and mandatory attendance, and readily available technical support for participants. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security awareness training, balancing the need for comprehensive coverage with the practical constraints of employee availability and diverse learning preferences. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that all employees receive essential security awareness training in a timely and effective manner, without causing undue disruption to business operations or creating barriers to participation. Careful judgment is required to select delivery methods and scheduling that maximize engagement and knowledge retention, while adhering to regulatory requirements for security awareness. The correct approach involves a multi-channel strategy that accommodates different learning styles and schedules, coupled with robust enrollment and attendance tracking. This ensures that training is accessible, participation is monitored, and compliance can be demonstrated. Specifically, offering a mix of live, instructor-led sessions, both in person and virtual, for interactive learning and Q&A, alongside on-demand modules for flexibility, addresses diverse needs. Proactive communication about session availability and mandatory attendance, along with a clear process for managing enrollment and providing technical support, are crucial for successful implementation. This aligns with the principles of ensuring all personnel are adequately informed about security risks and their responsibilities, a common expectation in regulatory frameworks governing data protection and cybersecurity, such as those that might be referenced in a CSAP exam context. The emphasis on tracking attendance and providing support directly addresses the need for demonstrable compliance and a positive user experience, which are critical for the effectiveness of any awareness program. An approach that relies solely on asynchronous, self-paced modules without any live interaction or proactive scheduling fails to cater to employees who may benefit from direct instruction or struggle with self-discipline. This can lead to lower engagement and comprehension, potentially leaving gaps in security awareness. Furthermore, a lack of clear attendance tracking makes it impossible to verify that all required personnel have completed the training, which is a significant compliance risk. An approach that schedules mandatory live sessions during peak business hours without offering alternatives or flexibility creates an undue burden on employees and can lead to resentment and reduced effectiveness. While live sessions are valuable, rigid scheduling without consideration for operational demands can hinder participation and create logistical nightmares. An approach that offers training only through a single, niche channel, such as a specific mobile app, without providing alternative access methods, excludes employees who may not have access to or be comfortable with that particular technology. This creates an accessibility barrier and undermines the goal of universal security awareness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a needs assessment to understand the diverse employee base and their learning preferences, followed by the design of a flexible and accessible training program. This program should incorporate multiple delivery channels, clear communication strategies, and robust tracking mechanisms. Regular feedback collection and program iteration are also essential to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates a significant increase in phishing attempts leading to suspected malware infections across multiple departments. During a recent incident, the IT security team was under immense pressure to restore affected systems and business operations as quickly as possible. Considering the Certified Security Awareness Practitioner (CSAP) role and its focus on regulatory compliance and best practices, which of the following approaches best balances immediate operational needs with long-term security posture and regulatory adherence in responding to such an incident? Option A. Activate the organization's incident response plan, prioritizing containment of the suspected malware, followed by forensic analysis to identify the attack vector and scope, and then proceeding with eradication and recovery, ensuring all actions are documented for regulatory purposes. Option B. Proceed with a complete system wipe and reinstallation of all operating systems and applications on affected machines, without any prior investigation or evidence preservation, to ensure a clean slate. Option C. Engage directly with the suspected attackers to negotiate the removal of the malware, bypassing internal IT security and legal counsel to expedite resolution. Option D. Immediately initiate system backups to restore affected machines and resume operations, deferring detailed forensic analysis and containment measures until after full restoration. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate system backups to restore affected machines and resume operations, deferring detailed forensic analysis and containment measures until after full restoration. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term security posture and regulatory compliance. The pressure to restore services quickly after a suspected ransomware attack can lead to rushed decisions that might overlook critical security steps, potentially exacerbating the incident or violating data protection regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the response is both effective in mitigating the immediate threat and compliant with relevant legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves a structured incident response plan that prioritizes containment, eradication, and recovery, while adhering to regulatory requirements for data breach notification and evidence preservation. This approach is right because it aligns with best practices for cybersecurity incident response, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory frameworks. For instance, in the U.S., regulations like HIPAA for healthcare or GDPR, if applicable to data of EU residents, require timely notification of data breaches and the implementation of reasonable security measures to prevent future incidents. A structured response ensures that all necessary steps are taken, including forensic analysis to understand the attack vector, which is crucial for both remediation and legal compliance. It also emphasizes the importance of maintaining an audit trail of actions taken, which is vital for regulatory investigations and potential legal proceedings. An approach that focuses solely on rapid restoration without proper containment and forensic analysis is incorrect because it risks incomplete eradication of the malware, allowing it to spread further or reinfect systems. This failure to contain the incident can lead to broader data compromise, violating the duty of care owed to data subjects and potentially breaching regulations that mandate the protection of sensitive information. Furthermore, skipping forensic analysis hinders the ability to understand the root cause, making it impossible to implement effective preventative measures and leaving the organization vulnerable to repeat attacks. This also jeopardizes any potential legal recourse or insurance claims. An approach that involves paying the ransom without consulting legal counsel or attempting to recover data through backups is incorrect. While seemingly a quick fix, paying a ransom does not guarantee data recovery and can fund further criminal activity. Ethically, it can be seen as enabling cybercrime. Legally, depending on the jurisdiction and the entity demanding the ransom, e.g., if they are a sanctioned entity, paying could have severe legal repercussions. It also bypasses the regulatory obligation to demonstrate reasonable efforts to protect data and recover from incidents, potentially leading to fines and reputational damage. An approach that involves immediately wiping all affected systems without proper evidence preservation or analysis is incorrect. This action, while seemingly decisive, destroys critical forensic evidence that could be used to understand the attack, identify vulnerabilities, and potentially prosecute the attackers. Regulatory bodies often require organizations to conduct thorough investigations and preserve evidence. Destroying this evidence can be seen as obstruction or a failure to comply with investigative requirements, leading to significant penalties. It also prevents the organization from learning from the incident and strengthening its defenses. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding and activating the organization's established incident response plan. This plan should outline clear roles, responsibilities, and procedures for different types of security incidents, including malware and ransomware attacks. The framework should prioritize containment, followed by eradication, recovery, and post-incident analysis. Crucially, it must integrate legal and compliance considerations from the outset, ensuring that any actions taken are aligned with relevant regulatory obligations, such as data breach notification timelines and evidence preservation requirements. Regular training and tabletop exercises are essential to ensure the team can execute this framework effectively under pressure. Question 10. Operational review demonstrates that the current security awareness training program is perceived as a compliance checkbox, with low employee engagement and a lack of demonstrable behavioral change. To optimize the program's effectiveness and ensure it addresses evolving threats, which of the following program design approaches would be most professionally sound and aligned with best practices for fostering a security-conscious culture? Option A. Prioritize the implementation of highly engaging, gamified training modules with leaderboards and rewards to maximize employee participation and enjoyment, assuming that entertainment will naturally lead to better retention of security principles. Option B. Develop a comprehensive program that begins with clearly defined, measurable learning objectives aligned with identified risks and organizational policies. This will be followed by a strategic selection of diverse training methods, such as a blend of e-learning for foundational knowledge, instructor-led sessions for complex topics, and gamification for engagement, catering to different learning styles and roles. The program will emphasize creating engaging, interactive content that reinforces learning and incorporates practical exercises, alongside designing assessments that accurately measure understanding and behavioral change, establishing a robust communication plan, and seamlessly integrating security awareness principles into existing policies and procedures. Option C. Create a standalone security awareness training module that is delivered annually, with minimal integration into existing company policies or daily operational procedures, to avoid overwhelming employees with constant security reminders. Option D. Focus on delivering a high volume of generic e-learning modules, covering a broad range of security topics, to ensure all employees receive a baseline level of awareness, irrespective of their specific roles or the risks they face. The correct answer is B. Develop a comprehensive program that begins with clearly defined, measurable learning objectives aligned with identified risks and organizational policies. This will be followed by a strategic selection of diverse training methods, such as a blend of e-learning for foundational knowledge, instructor-led sessions for complex topics, and gamification for engagement, catering to different learning styles and roles. The program will emphasize creating engaging, interactive content that reinforces learning and incorporates practical exercises, alongside designing assessments that accurately measure understanding and behavioral change, establishing a robust communication plan, and seamlessly integrating security awareness principles into existing policies and procedures. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for a comprehensive security awareness program with the practical constraints of limited resources and diverse employee needs. Developing effective learning objectives and selecting appropriate training methods are foundational to a successful program, but without a clear communication plan and integration into existing policies, the program's impact will be significantly diminished. Careful judgment is required to ensure the program is not only compliant, but also genuinely effective in changing employee behavior. The correct approach involves a holistic program design that starts with clearly defined, measurable learning objectives aligned with identified risks and organizational policies. This is followed by a strategic selection of diverse training methods, such as a blend of e-learning for foundational knowledge, instructor-led sessions for complex topics, and gamification for engagement, catering to different learning styles and roles. Crucially, this approach emphasizes creating engaging, interactive content that reinforces learning and incorporates practical exercises, designing assessments that accurately measure understanding and behavioral change, establishing a robust communication plan to ensure awareness and buy-in, and seamlessly integrating security awareness principles into existing policies and procedures are all vital steps. This comprehensive strategy ensures that the program is not a standalone initiative, but an embedded part of the organizational culture, directly supported by established rules and expectations. This aligns with the principles of a proactive and risk-based security posture, which is a cornerstone of regulatory expectations for data protection and security awareness training. An approach that focuses solely on delivering a large volume of generic e-learning modules without considering specific learning objectives or employee roles fails to address the nuanced risks and behaviors that need to be modified. This can lead to awareness fatigue and a lack of practical application, rendering the training ineffective and potentially non-compliant with the spirit of regulations that mandate effective security awareness. An approach that prioritizes flashy, gamified elements without a solid foundation of learning objectives and measurable outcomes risks creating a program that is entertaining but not educational. This can lead to superficial engagement and a failure to impart critical security knowledge, which is a significant ethical and regulatory failing, as the primary goal is to protect sensitive information and systems. An approach that neglects to integrate security awareness into existing policies and procedures creates a disconnect between training and daily operations. Employees may not understand how the learned behaviors translate into their work, or may be confused by conflicting directives, undermining the program's effectiveness and potentially leading to non-compliance. This demonstrates a failure to embed security awareness into the organizational fabric, which is essential for sustained behavioral change and regulatory adherence. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment to identify key threats and vulnerabilities. This informs the development of specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound SMART learning objectives. Subsequently, a needs analysis should guide the selection of appropriate training methods and content, ensuring a mix of approaches to cater to diverse audiences. The program design must include mechanisms for ongoing communication, reinforcement, and assessment of effectiveness. Finally, integration with existing policies and procedures is paramount to ensure that security awareness becomes an ingrained aspect of the organizational culture and operational practices. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that a security awareness practitioner requires a specific, specialized software tool to perform a critical task more efficiently. This software is not on the company's approved software list, and the company's acceptable use policy, AUP, strictly prohibits the installation of unauthorized software on company-issued devices. The practitioner is aware of this policy, but is also under pressure to complete the task quickly. What is the most responsible course of action? Option A. Download a portable version of the software and run it from a USB drive, connecting the drive to the company laptop to avoid a formal installation. Option B. Immediately report the need for the software to their manager and the IT department, requesting an official review and approval process for its installation, even if it delays the task. Option C. Install the software discreetly, believing that its limited use for a specific work task will not pose a significant risk and will improve productivity. Option D. Use a personal device to access the software and perform the task, then transfer the results to the company laptop. The correct answer is C. Install the software discreetly, believing that its limited use for a specific work task will not pose a significant risk and will improve productivity. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma for security awareness practitioners, highlighting the tension between personal convenience and adherence to organizational policy. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for a tool with the potential risks associated with using unauthorized software on company equipment, which can have significant security and compliance implications. Careful judgment is required to assess the risk versus reward of such actions. The correct approach involves understanding and strictly adhering to the company's acceptable use policy, AUP, regarding the installation of software. This means recognizing that company resources, including devices and networks, are provided for business purposes and are subject to policy. Installing unauthorized software, even for seemingly minor convenience, can introduce vulnerabilities, violate licensing agreements, and potentially lead to data breaches or other security incidents. By reporting the need for the software through the proper channels, the employee demonstrates responsible use of company resources and upholds their commitment to security awareness. This aligns with the fundamental principles of a robust security awareness program, which emphasizes policy compliance and risk mitigation. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the AUP and install the software without authorization. This action directly violates the company's policy on acceptable use of resources. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and the potential risks to the organization. From a regulatory perspective, depending on the jurisdiction and the nature of the software and data handled, this could lead to noncompliance with data protection laws or industry-specific regulations if the unauthorized software compromises sensitive information. Another incorrect approach would be to rationalize the installation by believing that a small, personal use application poses no significant threat. This line of reasoning ignores the interconnectedness of the company's IT infrastructure and the potential for even seemingly innocuous software to create entry points for malware or to interfere with legitimate security measures. It also undermines the principle of a unified security posture, where all employees are expected to contribute to the overall security of the organization. A third incorrect approach would be to seek a workaround that technically circumvents the AUP without formally seeking approval. This could involve using portable versions of software or installing it on a personal device and connecting it to the company network. While this might seem like a clever solution, it still carries significant risks. It can be difficult to monitor and control, potentially exposing the company network to threats from the personal device or the unauthorized software itself. It also demonstrates a lack of integrity and a willingness to circumvent established security controls. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's AUP and other relevant security policies. When faced with a need that appears to be outside of policy, the professional should first consult the policy to confirm the requirements. If the need is genuine and beneficial for work, the next step is to follow the established procedures for requesting exceptions or new software. This typically involves submitting a formal request to the IT department or relevant management, outlining the business justification and any perceived risks. This process ensures that all software installations are vetted, authorized, and managed, thereby maintaining the integrity of the organization's security posture and ensuring compliance with applicable regulations. Question 12. Cost-benefit analysis shows that investing in a comprehensive security awareness program yields significant returns, but to effectively justify this investment and guide future improvements, what is the most robust method for assessing the program's impact on organizational security? Option A. Measuring the total number of training modules completed by employees and the duration of their engagement with the training platform. Option B. Solely evaluating the percentage of employees who successfully answer questions on post-training quizzes, assuming knowledge recall directly equates to improved security. Option C. Conducting pre- and post-training knowledge assessments, tracking observable behavior changes through metrics like phishing simulation click-through rates, and analyzing trends in security incident rates. Option D. Primarily collecting anecdotal feedback and satisfaction scores from participants immediately following training sessions. The correct answer is C. Conducting pre- and post-training knowledge assessments, tracking observable behavior changes through metrics like phishing simulation click-through rates, and analyzing trends in security incident rates. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the practical need to demonstrate the value of a security awareness program with the ethical imperative to accurately measure its impact. The challenge lies in selecting assessment methods that are both effective in capturing meaningful data and compliant with the principles of good governance and accountability, without resorting to superficial metrics. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen metrics truly reflect improved security posture and not just a temporary uptick in knowledge recall. The correct approach involves a multifaceted measurement strategy that combines pre- and post-training knowledge assessments with observable behavior change indicators and incident rate tracking. This holistic view provides a more robust understanding of program effectiveness. Regulatory frameworks, such as those underpinning the Certified Security Awareness Practitioner (CSAP) certification, emphasize demonstrable risk reduction and a culture of security. Measuring knowledge retention is a baseline, but evaluating actual behavior change, e.g., reduced phishing click rates, proper data handling, and correlating this with a decrease in security incidents, e.g., malware infections, data breaches, directly addresses the core objectives of security awareness training and aligns with the expectation of responsible stewardship of organizational security. This approach demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement and provides credible evidence of return on investment to stakeholders. Focusing solely on post-training knowledge recall without assessing behavior or incident rates is an insufficient approach. While it measures immediate learning, it fails to confirm whether that knowledge translates into safer practices or a reduction in actual security events. This can lead to a false sense of security and an inability to identify areas where the training is not effectively influencing behavior. Measuring only the number of training modules completed is a superficial metric that does not indicate comprehension or application of security principles. It prioritizes participation over impact, which is a failure in demonstrating program effectiveness and can lead to misallocation of resources. This approach neglects the fundamental goal of security awareness training, which is to foster secure behaviors. Relying exclusively on positive feedback from participants, while valuable for gauging engagement, is an inadequate measure of program effectiveness. Positive feedback does not necessarily correlate with improved security practices or a reduction in incidents. It can be influenced by factors unrelated to actual security knowledge or behavior change, and therefore does not provide the objective data required to justify continued investment or to identify areas for improvement. This approach is ethically questionable, as it prioritizes stakeholder satisfaction over demonstrable security outcomes. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Clearly defining the program's objectives and desired outcomes. 2. Identifying key performance indicators, KPI, that directly measure progress towards these objectives, encompassing knowledge, behavior, and incident reduction. 3. Selecting appropriate, reliable, and valid assessment tools and methods for each KPI. 4. Establishing a baseline before training and conducting regular follow-up assessments. 5. Analyzing the data to identify trends, successes, and areas for improvement, and using this analysis to inform future training strategies and resource allocation. 6. Communicating findings transparently to stakeholders, focusing on actionable insights and demonstrable impact. Question 13. Benchmark analysis indicates that instructor-led training sessions are a critical component of a robust security awareness program. When developing and delivering these sessions for a CSAP-certified environment, which approach best optimizes the training process to meet both engagement and compliance objectives? Option A. Design the training to directly address the most prevalent and relevant security threats and compliance obligations specific to the organization and its industry, using practical examples and scenario-based exercises. Option B. Prioritize the use of humor and entertainment to make the training memorable, with security topics integrated as secondary elements within the overall experience. Option C. Utilize a standardized, one-size-fits-all training module that covers general security best practices, assuming all participants have similar levels of technical understanding. Option D. Focus on delivering a broad overview of theoretical cybersecurity principles, using engaging anecdotes and interactive quizzes to maintain participant interest. The correct answer is D. Focus on delivering a broad overview of theoretical cybersecurity principles, using engaging anecdotes and interactive quizzes to maintain participant interest. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security awareness training, ensuring that the delivery method is not only engaging, but also compliant with the specific requirements of the Certified Security Awareness Practitioner, CSAP, certification's regulatory framework. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for effective knowledge transfer with the imperative to adhere to established guidelines for training content and delivery. A practitioner must demonstrate not only an understanding of security principles, but also the ability to impart that knowledge in a manner that meets regulatory and ethical standards. The correct approach involves tailoring the instructor-led training content and delivery to directly address the specific security risks and compliance obligations relevant to the target audience, as mandated by the CSAP framework. This ensures that the training is practical, actionable, and directly contributes to fulfilling the organization's security awareness objectives within the defined regulatory landscape. This approach is justified because it prioritizes the practical application of security knowledge in a way that aligns with the spirit and letter of the CSAP focus on real-world security preparedness and adherence to best practices. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on theoretical security concepts without practical application fails to meet the CSAP emphasis on actionable awareness. This neglects the regulatory requirement to equip individuals with the skills to identify and mitigate actual threats. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes entertainment over substantive security content risks trivializing critical security messages, potentially leading to a lack of comprehension and adherence to security policies, which is a direct contravention of the CSAP goal of fostering a security-conscious culture. Finally, an approach that uses generic security examples without considering the specific industry or organizational context relevant to the CSAP framework may not adequately prepare participants for the unique threats they face, thus failing to meet the practical application standard. Professionals should employ a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the CSAP framework's objectives and any applicable regulatory mandates. They should then assess the target audience's specific roles, responsibilities, and the security risks they are most likely to encounter. Training content and delivery methods should be designed to directly address these factors, ensuring that the information is relevant, understandable, and actionable. Continuous evaluation of training effectiveness against these criteria is crucial for ongoing process optimization. Question 14. The audit findings indicate a need to strengthen the organization's posture against insider threats. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and professional best practices for recognizing, preventing, and responding to insider threat incidents? Option A. Focus exclusively on external threat mitigation, such as firewalls and intrusion detection systems, and assume that insider threats are rare and difficult to prevent. Option B. Significantly increase employee monitoring through keystroke logging and constant video surveillance of all workstations, with a policy that allows for immediate termination upon detection of any unusual activity. Option C. Rely solely on background checks for all new hires and conduct periodic, informal discussions with employees about security, assuming that most threats originate externally. Option D. Implement comprehensive security awareness training that educates employees on recognizing suspicious activities. Establish technical controls for monitoring anomalous user behavior, and develop a clear, documented incident response plan that includes investigation protocols. The correct answer is D. Implement comprehensive security awareness training that educates employees on recognizing suspicious activities, establish technical controls for monitoring anomalous user behavior, and develop a clear, documented incident response plan that includes investigation protocols. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need to protect sensitive information with the rights and privacy of employees, all within the strict confines of regulatory compliance. A security practitioner must exercise careful judgment to identify potential insider threats without resorting to overly intrusive or discriminatory practices. The effectiveness of security awareness training is directly tied to its ability to foster a culture of vigilance and responsibility among all personnel. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that emphasizes proactive measures and a clear, documented response plan. This includes robust security awareness training that educates employees on identifying and reporting suspicious activities, implementing technical controls to monitor for anomalous behavior, and establishing clear protocols for investigating potential incidents. This aligns with best practices in cybersecurity and insider threat management, which prioritize prevention and early detection. From a regulatory perspective, such a comprehensive approach helps demonstrate due diligence in protecting data and systems, which is often a requirement under data protection laws and industry-specific regulations. Ethically, it respects employee privacy by focusing on observable behaviors and system anomalies rather than profiling individuals. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increased surveillance without a clear policy or justification fails to address the root causes of insider threats and can lead to a climate of distrust, potentially alienating employees and hindering reporting. This approach may also violate privacy regulations by collecting excessive personal data without a legitimate business need or proper consent. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate disciplinary action based on suspicion alone, without a thorough investigation, is ethically unsound and legally risky. It can lead to wrongful accusations, damage employee morale, and expose the organization to legal challenges. Furthermore, an approach that neglects regular security awareness training leaves the organization vulnerable, as employees may not be equipped to recognize or report potential threats, thereby failing to meet the organization's duty of care in protecting its assets and data. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to their organization. This involves assessing the organization's risk profile, identifying critical assets, and then developing a layered security strategy. This strategy should incorporate technical controls, administrative policies, and ongoing employee education. When an incident is suspected, the framework dictates a methodical investigation process that respects due process, privacy, and legal requirements, ensuring that actions taken are proportionate to the evidence and aligned with established policies and regulations. Question 15. Stakeholder feedback indicates a desire to increase learner engagement with the mandatory annual security awareness training. The training program aims to reinforce best practices for identifying and reporting phishing attempts. Which of the following gamification approaches is most likely to effectively enhance both learner engagement and the retention of critical security concepts, aligning with the goals of a robust security awareness program? Option A. Introducing a competitive trivia game with random security-related questions, where the highest score wins a small prize, regardless of whether the questions relate to the specific phishing awareness content covered. Option B. Creating a narrative-driven adventure game where players must make security-related decisions to progress, with immediate feedback on the consequences of their choices and unlockable content related to phishing prevention. Option C. Implementing a point system where learners earn points for completing modules, with bonus points awarded for answering all quiz questions correctly, and a leaderboard displaying top performers based on accumulated points. Option D. Awarding badges for simply logging into the training platform each day, with no connection to the actual security content or learning progress. The correct answer is C. Implementing a point system where learners earn points for completing modules, with bonus points awarded for answering all quiz questions correctly, and a leaderboard displaying top performers based on accumulated points. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the desire for increased engagement through gamification with the fundamental need to ensure that security awareness training remains effective and compliant with regulatory requirements. The challenge lies in designing gamified elements that genuinely reinforce learning and behavior change, rather than becoming mere distractions or superficial additions. Careful judgment is required to select gamification strategies that align with the organization's security objectives and the specific learning outcomes mandated by the relevant regulatory framework. The correct approach involves integrating gamification elements that directly support the learning objectives of the security awareness program and are demonstrably effective in reinforcing secure behaviors. This means using game mechanics like points, badges, leaderboards, or challenges that are tied to understanding and applying security principles, such as identifying phishing attempts or reporting suspicious activity. The justification for this approach stems from the core principles of effective security awareness training, which aim to foster a security-conscious culture and reduce risk. While the CSAP certification itself does not prescribe specific gamification techniques, best practices in security awareness training, which are implicitly expected to be followed by practitioners, emphasize measurable outcomes and behavioral change. Gamification, when implemented thoughtfully, can contribute to these outcomes by increasing learner motivation and retention. An incorrect approach would be to implement gamification solely for the sake of novelty or to boost superficial engagement metrics without a clear link to learning objectives or behavioral outcomes. For instance, introducing a complex leaderboard system that rewards participation rather than correct answers or secure actions could lead to learners focusing on gaming the system rather than absorbing the security content. This fails to meet the implicit requirement of effective security awareness training, which is to improve the organization's security posture. Another incorrect approach would be to use gamification in a way that trivializes serious security threats or encourages risky behavior in pursuit of game rewards. This could undermine the gravity of security risks and potentially lead to a false sense of security, which is ethically problematic and counterproductive to the goals of security awareness. A third incorrect approach might involve gamifying elements that are not relevant to the core security concepts being taught, thereby creating a disconnect between the game and the learning, leading to superficial engagement without actual knowledge or behavioral improvement. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the learning objectives, the target audience, and the specific security risks the organization faces. For implementing gamification, practitioners should conduct a needs assessment to identify which security concepts are most critical and how gamification can best support their reinforcement. They should then design gamified elements that are directly aligned with these objectives, ensuring that rewards and challenges are tied to demonstrable understanding and application of security principles. Continuous evaluation of the gamification's effectiveness in improving security behaviors and reducing incidents is crucial. This iterative process, guided by the principles of effective training and risk reduction, ensures that gamification serves as a valuable tool for enhancing security awareness rather than a mere engagement tactic. Question 16. The performance metrics show a significant increase in account lockouts due to forgotten passwords and a concerning number of reported phishing attempts that successfully led to credential compromise. As the certified security awareness practitioner, what is the most effective strategy to address these trends and improve overall password security? Option A. Significantly reduce the complexity requirements for passwords and extend the password expiration period to minimize user frustration and reduce the number of forgotten passwords. Option B. Increase the frequency of password resets for all users, requiring them to change their passwords weekly, and provide a list of common password patterns to avoid. Option C. Implement a mandatory password manager for all employees, conduct mandatory training on its use, and update the password policy to require longer, more complex passwords with regular mandatory changes, while clearly communicating the rationale behind these changes. Option D. Focus solely on deploying multi-factor authentication, MFA, across all systems, assuming this will mitigate the risks associated with weak or compromised passwords. The correct answer is C. Implement a mandatory password manager for all employees, conduct mandatory training on its use, and update the password policy to require longer, more complex passwords with regular mandatory changes, while clearly communicating the rationale behind these changes. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing user convenience with robust security requirements. Common tension in security awareness. The performance metrics indicating a rise in password-related incidents, such as account lockouts and potential breaches, directly impact operational efficiency and could lead to significant financial and reputational damage. A security awareness practitioner must navigate this by implementing effective policies and training without alienating users or creating excessive friction. Careful judgment is required to identify the root causes of the increased incidents and to propose solutions that are both compliant and practical. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that addresses the core issues identified by the performance metrics. This includes reinforcing the importance of strong, unique passwords through targeted training, educating users on secure password management techniques like using password managers, and clearly communicating the organization's password policy, including its rationale. This approach is correct because it directly tackles the identified problems by empowering users with knowledge and tools, fostering a culture of security, and ensuring compliance with relevant regulations that mandate secure handling of credentials. For instance, in a U.S. context, regulations like NIST SB 800-53 and the principles behind the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2015 emphasize the need for strong authentication and user education to protect sensitive information. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing password complexity requirements without providing adequate user support or education fails to address the underlying issues. This can lead to users creating predictable but complex passwords, e.g., adding numbers to a common phrase, or resorting to insecure methods like writing passwords down, thereby increasing the risk of compromise. This approach is ethically questionable, as it places an undue burden on users without providing the necessary resources for compliance, and it may violate the spirit of regulations that aim for practical and effective security measures. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes user convenience by significantly lowering password strength requirements or implementing overly lenient password policies, such as frequent password resets with simple patterns, directly contradicts the goal of enhancing security. This approach is a clear regulatory failure, as it undermines the organization's ability to protect sensitive data, potentially violating data protection laws like HIPAA, if applicable, or GDPR, if operating under its extraterritorial reach, which mandate appropriate technical and organizational measures to safeguard information. It also fails to address the observed rise in incidents, suggesting a lack of understanding of the problem's severity. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on technical controls like multi-factor authentication, MFA, without addressing password hygiene is also insufficient. While MFA is a critical security layer, it does not negate the need for strong passwords. If users have weak, compromised passwords, MFA can still be bypassed through social engineering or other attacks. This approach is professionally deficient because it creates a false sense of security and fails to implement a comprehensive security strategy, leaving the organization vulnerable. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough analysis of performance data to identify specific security weaknesses. This should be followed by an assessment of existing policies and training programs to determine their effectiveness. The practitioner should then research and propose solutions that are aligned with regulatory requirements and industry best practices, considering both technical controls and user education. Crucially, any proposed changes should be communicated clearly to users, explaining the rationale and providing necessary support to ensure successful adoption and compliance. Question 17. Process analysis reveals that a mid-sized financial services firm is seeking to significantly reduce its IT operational costs by migrating a substantial portion of its data storage and processing to a public cloud provider. The IT department has identified several potential providers, with one offering a significantly lower price point than the others. However, preliminary checks indicate this cheapest provider has less transparent documentation regarding its data encryption protocols and access management capabilities compared to its competitors. The firm's compliance officer is concerned about potential regulatory violations and data breach risks. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while adhering to U.S. regulatory frameworks and professional ethical standards for data security? Option A. Negotiate a custom security addendum with the cheapest provider, detailing specific encryption and access control requirements, and proceed with migration only if the provider agrees to these terms at a price comparable to their standard offering. Option B. Conduct a thorough due diligence process on all potential cloud providers, scrutinizing their security certifications, data handling policies, encryption standards, and compliance with relevant U.S. financial regulations, e.g., GLBA SEC rules, and prioritize a provider that offers a strong security posture and verifiable compliance, even if it incurs a higher cost. Option C. Select the cheapest cloud provider, assuming their lower cost reflects efficient operations and that standard industry security practices are likely in place, and then focus on internal user access controls. Option D. Proceed with migrating to the cheapest provider and immediately implement a broad, company-wide data anonymization policy to mitigate potential data breach impacts, without a detailed review of the provider's specific security measures. Correct answer is C. Select the cheapest cloud provider, assuming their lower cost reflects efficient operations and that standard industry security practices are likely in place, and then focus on internal user access controls. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost savings with the long-term imperative of maintaining robust cloud security and compliance. The organization is under pressure to reduce expenditure, which can lead to shortcuts or the adoption of less secure, cheaper cloud solutions. However, failing to adequately secure cloud data and manage best practices can result in significant data breaches, regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Careful judgment is required to identify solutions that are both cost-effective and compliant with relevant regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment of all cloud services, prioritizing data protection and compliance requirements over immediate cost reductions. This means evaluating the security features, data residency, access controls, and compliance certifications of any proposed cloud solution. Implementing a robust cloud security framework that includes regular audits, continuous monitoring, and employee training on cloud security best practices is essential. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible data stewardship mandated by regulatory frameworks such as the U.S. regulations governing data protection and cybersecurity. Specifically, organizations are expected to implement reasonable security measures to protect sensitive information, as outlined in regulations like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for healthcare data, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, for consumer data, both of which emphasize data protection and risk management in all environments, including cloud. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the cheapest cloud provider without a comprehensive security and compliance review is professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct due diligence violates the ethical obligation to protect customer data and exposes the organization to significant legal and financial risks. Such an approach disregards the regulatory requirement to implement appropriate security safeguards, potentially leading to violations of data protection laws. Another incorrect approach that involves migrating sensitive data to a cloud provider that does not offer adequate encryption or access controls, even if it is cost-effective, is also professionally unsound. This directly contravenes the principle of data minimization and the requirement to protect data in transit and at rest. Regulatory bodies expect organizations to ensure that data is protected throughout its lifecycle, and choosing a provider that cannot meet these basic security standards is a clear ethical and regulatory failure. A third incorrect approach that neglects to update cloud security policies and employee training to reflect the new cloud environment, even if the chosen provider has strong security features, is also problematic. Security is a shared responsibility, and failing to educate employees on how to securely interact with cloud services creates vulnerabilities. This oversight can lead to accidental data exposure or unauthorized access, which can have severe regulatory consequences. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify the core business objective, e.g., cost reduction. 2. Assess the associated risks, particularly in the context of cloud security and data protection. 3. Research and evaluate potential cloud solutions against security, compliance, and cost criteria. 4. Prioritize solutions that offer the best balance of security, compliance, and cost-effectiveness. 5. Develop and implement a comprehensive cloud security strategy, including policies, procedures, and training. 6. Continuously monitor and review the cloud environment for security threats and compliance adherence. Question 18. Process analysis reveals a significant increase in sophisticated phishing emails targeting employees, with some exhibiting characteristics of spear phishing. The security team has detected several suspicious emails that appear to originate from trusted external partners, containing urgent requests for sensitive information. What is the most appropriate initial step for the certified security awareness practitioner to recommend to the organization? Option A. Immediately implement a company-wide email block on all external communications until the threat is fully neutralized. Option B. Advise all employees to ignore any suspicious emails and delete them without reporting them to the security team. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify the specific assets targeted, potential impact, and likelihood of success for these phishing attempts, and then develop a targeted response plan. Option D. Issue a general security awareness bulletin reminding employees about the dangers of phishing without specific guidance on the current threat. Correct answer is A. Immediately implement a company-wide email block on all external communications until the threat is fully neutralized. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a practitioner to balance immediate operational needs with long-term risk mitigation and regulatory compliance. The pressure to quickly address a potential security incident, like a phishing attack, can lead to hasty decisions that overlook critical risk assessment steps. A thorough risk assessment is not merely a procedural step, but a fundamental requirement for demonstrating due diligence and ensuring that security measures are proportionate to the identified threats, aligning with the principles of responsible data handling and security awareness training mandated by regulatory frameworks. The correct approach involves conducting a structured risk assessment to understand the potential impact and likelihood of the phishing attack. This process typically includes identifying the assets at risk, e.g., sensitive data system access, evaluating the potential consequences of a successful attack, e.g., data breach, financial loss, reputational damage, and determining the probability of the attack occurring or succeeding. Based on this assessment, appropriate controls and response strategies can be prioritized and implemented. This aligns with the core principles of security awareness training, which emphasizes proactive identification and mitigation of threats. For example, the UK's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO, guidance emphasize a risk-based approach to data protection, requiring organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. Similarly, CSAP, Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, Guidelines for Financial Professionals, stress the importance of understanding and managing risks, including those posed by cyber threats like phishing, to protect client data and maintain market integrity. An incorrect approach would be to immediately block all external email without a proper assessment. This is a disproportionate response that can disrupt business operations, hinder legitimate communication, and fail to address the root cause of the vulnerability. It bypasses the necessary risk evaluation, potentially leading to unnecessary costs and operational inefficiencies, and does not demonstrate a considered risk-based security posture as expected by regulators. Another incorrect approach is to solely rely on user reporting without a systematic process for verification and response. While user reporting is valuable, it needs to be integrated into a broader incident response framework that includes investigation, analysis, and remediation. Without this, potential threats might be overlooked or mishandled, failing to meet the due diligence expected under regulatory frameworks that require organizations to have robust incident management processes. A further incorrect approach is to assume the phishing attempt is a minor issue and only provide generic awareness training updates. This underestimates the potential impact of sophisticated attacks like spear phishing or whaling, which are specifically targeted and can have severe consequences. It fails to acknowledge the need for a tailored response based on the specific nature and potential impact of the identified threat, thereby not fulfilling the obligation to implement proportionate security measures. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with threat identification, followed by a comprehensive risk assessment. This assessment should inform the selection and implementation of appropriate security controls and incident response plans. Regular review and updating of these processes, informed by evolving threat landscapes and regulatory guidance, are crucial for maintaining an effective security posture. Question 19. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in the number of employees accessing sensitive company data from personal mobile devices, with a notable rise in reported instances of suspicious links being clicked on these devices. What is the most effective and compliant approach to mitigate this escalating risk? Option A. Require all employees to cease using personal mobile devices for any work-related activities until a new, highly restrictive BYOD, bring your own device, policy can be drafted and approved. Option B. Deploy advanced mobile threat detection software across all company-issued and personal devices accessing corporate resources without updating existing security policies or providing additional user training. Option C. Immediately implement a mandatory, comprehensive mobile device security policy that includes clear guidelines on acceptable use, data handling, and incident reporting, coupled with targeted security awareness training focused on mobile threats and phishing. Option D. Conduct a thorough investigation into each individual instance of a suspicious link being clicked, addressing each case reactively as it arises, and relying on existing general security awareness training. The correct answer is C. Immediately implement a mandatory, comprehensive mobile device security policy that includes clear guidelines on acceptable use, data handling, and incident reporting, coupled with targeted security awareness training focused on mobile threats and phishing. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the organization's need for security and compliance with the practical realities of employee mobile device usage. The Certified Security Awareness Practitioner, CSAP, must navigate potential privacy concerns, user adoption challenges, and the ever-evolving threat landscape associated with mobile devices. Careful judgment is required to implement effective security measures without unduly hindering productivity or creating a hostile work environment. The correct approach involves implementing a comprehensive mobile device security policy that is clearly communicated to all employees. This policy should outline acceptable use, data protection requirements, and incident reporting procedures. It should also include provisions for regular security awareness training specifically tailored to mobile threats, such as phishing attacks targeting mobile platforms, the risks of unsecured Wi-Fi networks, and the importance of app vetting. This approach is justified by regulatory frameworks that mandate data protection and require organizations to implement reasonable security measures to safeguard sensitive information. For example, in the U.S., the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for healthcare data, or the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, for financial data, impose strict requirements on protecting sensitive information, which often resides on or is accessed via mobile devices. Furthermore, ethical considerations dictate that employees should be informed about security policies and the rationale behind them, fostering trust and encouraging compliance. Implementing a policy that mandates the use of personal devices for all work-related activities without any security controls is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach exposes sensitive organizational data to a high risk of compromise, violating data protection regulations, and potentially leading to severe financial penalties and reputational damage. It also fails to uphold the organization's duty of care to protect customer or patient data. Adopting a reactive approach, where security measures are only implemented after a security incident involving a mobile device occurs, is also a critical failure. This demonstrates a lack of proactive risk management, which is a fundamental requirement of most data protection regulations. It suggests negligence and a failure to implement reasonable security measures before harm occurs, leading to potential legal liabilities and a breach of trust with stakeholders. Focusing solely on technical controls, such as mandatory encryption, without adequate user training and clear policy guidelines, is another flawed approach. While technical controls are essential, they are often bypassed or rendered ineffective by user error or lack of awareness. This approach neglects the human element, which is frequently the weakest link in the security chain, and fails to meet the comprehensive security requirements mandated by regulations that emphasize a multi-layered defense strategy. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment, policy development, user education, and continuous monitoring. This involves understanding the specific data types handled, the potential threats, and the regulatory landscape. Developing clear, actionable policies that are regularly reviewed and updated is crucial. Investing in ongoing, relevant security awareness training for employees, particularly concerning mobile device risks, is paramount. Finally, establishing mechanisms for monitoring compliance and responding effectively to incidents ensures a robust and resilient security posture. Question 20. The performance metrics show a consistent pattern of employees leaving sensitive documents unattended on desks in a specific department, despite existing physical security policies and signage. As the certified security awareness practitioner, what is the most effective initial course of action to address this recurring physical security threat? Option A. Advise the department head to install surveillance cameras to monitor desk areas for unattended documents. Option B. Immediately report the department to HR for policy violations and recommend disciplinary action for all involved employees. Option C. Schedule a targeted, in-person security awareness refresher session for the affected department, focusing on the risks of unsecured physical documents and reinforcing proper disposal and storage procedures. Option D. Implement a new, more stringent access control system for the department's office space, requiring badge access for all entry points. The correct answer is C. Schedule a targeted, in-person security awareness refresher session for the affected department, focusing on the risks of unsecured physical documents and reinforcing proper disposal and storage procedures. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with robust physical security, a common tension in many organizations. The security awareness practitioner must interpret performance data not just as a measure of productivity, but as an indicator of potential security vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to avoid overreacting to minor deviations, or, conversely, overlooking significant risks that could lead to data breaches or unauthorized access. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with the department head to understand the context behind the observed physical security lapses and collaboratively developing targeted awareness training. This is the best professional practice because it addresses the root cause of the problem, a lack of awareness or adherence to policy, rather than just the symptoms. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible data stewardship, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by frameworks like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, if the organization handles personal data. These regulations emphasize the need for appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect data, which includes ensuring personnel are adequately trained on security protocols. A proactive, educational approach fosters a security-conscious culture, which is more sustainable and effective than punitive measures alone. An incorrect approach of immediately escalating to disciplinary action without investigation fails to address the underlying issue and can damage employee morale and trust. This could be seen as a failure to implement proportionate security measures, potentially violating principles of fairness and reasonableness expected under employment law and data protection guidelines that advocate for a risk-based approach to security. Another incorrect approach of implementing stricter access controls without understanding the operational impact, could hinder legitimate business functions and create new security risks if employees find workarounds. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the operational context and a failure to conduct a proper risk assessment, which is a cornerstone of effective security management and often a regulatory requirement. Finally, an incorrect approach of solely relying on automated alerts without human intervention or follow-up misses the opportunity to educate and correct behavior. This reactive stance can lead to repeated incidents and a perception that security policies are not genuinely enforced or understood, potentially failing to meet the reasonable security standards expected under various data protection laws. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Data interpretation. Analyze performance metrics for security implications, not just operational ones. 2. Contextual understanding. Seek to understand the why behind observed behaviors or trends. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the actual security risk posed by the observed issues. 4. Collaborative problem solving. Engage relevant stakeholders to develop solutions. 5. Targeted intervention. Implement solutions that address the root cause, prioritizing education and awareness. 6. Escalation if necessary. Reserve formal disciplinary action or stricter controls for persistent or willful noncompliance after educational efforts.